Why housing is becoming unaffordable everywhere. If you feel like owning a home is slipping further out of reach every year, you're not imagining it. Across the world, housing is becoming more expensive, more competitive, and more unattainable, even for people who are doing everything right. Working full-time, saving consistently, and avoiding unnecessary spending no longer guarantee stability. And this isn't limited to one country, one city, or one generation. It's happening almost everywhere. What makes this confusing is that the explanations people hear don't always match reality. Some say housing is expensive because demand is high. Others say it's because of population growth, immigration, or individual lifestyle choices. But these explanations don't fully explain what's happening. Because even in places where population growth has slowed, or demand has weakened, housing remains unaffordable. To understand why, we need to stop looking at housing as just a place to live and start looking at what it has become. For most of human history, housing served a simple purpose. It was shelter. A basic need. Something people built, rented, or owned to live their lives. Prices were influenced by local wages, materials, and availability. If an area became too expensive, people moved elsewhere, and prices adjusted. That relationship has changed. Over the past few decades, housing has slowly transformed from shelter into a financial asset. And once that shift occurred, affordability stopped being the priority. When housing becomes an asset, its primary function is no longer to house people. Its function becomes to store value, generate returns, and protect wealth. This changes how the entire system behaves. In asset markets, rising prices are not a problem. They are the goal. This is the first and most important reason housing is becoming unaffordable. In many countries, governments and financial systems actively support rising housing prices. Mortgages are subsidized. Interest rates are lowered. Lending is expanded. Policies are designed to keep prices stable or growing, not falling. Because falling housing prices don't just affect homeowners. They affect banks, pension funds, insurers, and the broader financial system. Housing is deeply tied to debt. Most homes today are purchased with borrowed money. Mortgages last decades. Banks depend on them. Financial institutions package and trade them. When housing prices rise, the system feels stable. When they fall, risk appears everywhere. As a result, policies tend to favor price support, even if it makes homes less affordable. At the same time, wages have not kept pace. In many cities, home prices have grown several times faster than incomes. What once required 3 to 5 years of income now requires 10, 15, or more. This gap forces people to borrow more, take on more risk, or give up entirely. This creates a feedback loop. As prices rise, people rush to buy before they rise further. This increases demand. That demand pushes prices higher. Investors enter the market, seeing housing as a safe place to park money. That pushes prices higher still. Eventually, housing becomes unaffordable not just for first-time buyers, but even for middle-income earners. Supply is often blamed next. People are told that housing is expensive because there aren't enough homes. In some places, this is partly true. Construction has not always kept up with population growth. Zoning laws, land restrictions, and slow approvals limit new supply. But supply alone does not explain the scale of the problem. In many cities, housing units sit empty. In others, luxury apartments are built while affordable housing remains scarce. This is not a supply failure. It is a mismatch between what is profitable to build and what people actually need. Developers respond to incentives. If luxury housing delivers higher returns, that is what gets built. Affordable housing often requires subsidies, lower margins, or regulation, which the market does not naturally provide. Another major factor is investment. Housing has become a global investment vehicle. Wealth flows across borders into property markets. Real estate is seen as stable, tangible, and protected. Investors buy homes not to live in them, but to store value. Some rent them out. Others leave them empty. In both cases, prices rise. When housing competes with global capital, local incomes lose. A teacher, nurse, or engineer earning a local salary cannot compete with an investor using accumulated wealth or cheap credit. This pushes prices beyond what local wages can support. Low interest rates have made this even worse. For years, interest rates remained historically low. Borrowing became cheap. This allowed buyers to take on larger mortgages, not because homes were affordable, but because monthly payments seemed manageable. Prices adjusted upward to match borrowing capacity, not income. When rates rise, prices don't necessarily fall. Instead, affordability collapses. Monthly payments jump. Buyers disappear. But sellers hold on, waiting for conditions to improve. Supply freezes. Prices stagnate at high levels. This creates a market where fewer people can participate, but prices remain elevated. Renters feel this pressure most. As ownership becomes unattainable, more people are pushed into renting. Increased demand for rental housing drives rents higher. At the same time, landlords pass on higher costs, higher interest rates, and higher expectations of return. Rent becomes disconnected from wages, just like home prices. This is why people feel trapped. They save, but prices rise faster. They rent, but rents rise too. Moving farther away increases commute costs and reduces quality of life. Staying close becomes unaffordable. The problem is not that people are failing. The system has changed. Housing is no longer priced based on what people earn. It is priced based on what the system can extract. This is why the problem feels global. Different countries have different laws, cultures, and policies, yet housing affordability is declining almost everywhere. Because the underlying forces are similar. Financialization. Investment. Debt. Policy incentives. Wage stagnation. None of this means that housing will never become affordable again. But it does mean that the old assumptions no longer apply. The idea that hard work naturally leads to home ownership is outdated in many markets. The idea that saving alone is enough no longer reflects reality. The system rewards timing, ownership, and access to capital more than effort. Understanding this doesn't make the situation easier emotionally. But it does provide clarity. It explains why so many people feel frustrated, anxious, and left behind, even when they are doing everything society told them to do. It explains why housing debates are emotional and political, even when the causes are structural. And it explains why simple solutions rarely work. Housing affordability is not a single problem. It is the result of many systems interacting at once. Fixing it requires trade-offs. And trade-offs are difficult. But understanding the forces at work allows people to make better decisions. To adjust expectations. To recognize that the struggle is shared, not personal. Housing is becoming unaffordable everywhere not because people suddenly became irresponsible, but because housing stopped being treated as shelter and started being treated as an asset. And until that changes, affordability will remain the exception, not the norm.